My name is Sharon Salzberg, and I teach meditation, and I write books when I can about teaching meditation. I think meditation practice is like an incredible experiment to make with our lives. Instead of feeling like we're stuck in a rut or we can't change, or that our lives are like this narrow confine of what we used to have that sense of we can really know ourselves in a different way. We can practice connection to some inner strengths. We can connect to one another in a different way. We can really reevaluate happiness. We're taught so many things about where happiness is to be found. Well, why don't we take a look and see if that's truthful, if that's accurate, or maybe there's a bigger world for us out there if we just change some habits. I think we have to see what's realistic for us, whatever that might be. So that might be 5 minutes a day, it might be 10 minutes a day. But I think as much as possible, if you can create a fairly undisturbed 10 minutes and start with a simple technique like feeling the breath, just feeling the sensations of the natural breath. You don't have to start with something elaborate or too complex or difficult. Just keep coming back to your breath. And the understanding that's essential is that it's not going to be 8,000 breaths before your mind wanders. It'll probably be 2. And that you can realize that's normal, that's okay. And that what we're practicing is gently letting go and coming back. And if you do that in those 10 minutes, let's say, in the morning, then when you're at work, or you're traveling, you're commuting, or you're sitting anxiously in the doctor's waiting room, or you're standing online impatiently in the store, you can remember, oh, I have the breath. That's a resource. That's a settling place. That's a centering place. You don't have to close your eyes or look weird or anything, but it's there for you. Of course, one has to be realistic in terms of one's circumstance. I think of it in a more general way as 10 minutes of dedicated practice a day. And I think ideally it's more like 20. And some days it's only going to be 5. So, or 2, whatever it is. But I think the everydayness of it is important, and I think the dedication of it is important. So maybe you walk to work, and that's 10 minutes. And so you're doing a walking meditation. But what I mean by dedication is that you're not also using that time to consciously plan the meeting. Thoughts about the meeting may come up, but that's not your purpose in taking that walk. It's really to be present with the sensations and the experience of the moment. And so I think hypothetically, we don't even need that. We could just use mindfully drinking a cup of tea, or Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh has this famous exercise where he says, don't pick up the phone on the first ring, let it ring 3 times and breathe, and then you pick it up. My experience is that I don't actually tend to remember when the phone rings unless I've also had that period of dedicated practice. So I know it's hard, and it needs to be reasonable. Like I said, you can't say, well, I'm going to sit 4 hours, and if I miss it, I'm going to sit 8 hours on Saturday. It's not going to happen. But finding a way to carve out at least a few minutes is really good. I think that's a crucial question, because I come upon so many people who say, well, I tried that once, I failed at it. They feel very discouraged. And that's why I think the most important thing is to have confidence and clarity about what will come and what won't come in the meditation practice. We say that the essence of meditation is relationship. It's changing our relationship to our experience. Sometimes beautiful, wondrous, incredible things happen for us, and we hardly even notice because we're so distracted, or we feel we don't deserve them, whatever it is, and so we kind of reject them. So we want to practice being really present and open when wonderful things happen. And sometimes, of course, painful, difficult, challenging things happen. And on top of that difficulty, we add the shame and the projection into the future, like this is all that I'll ever feel, or sense of tremendous isolation instead of community. And so we want to challenge our relationship to pain and see if we can shift that. So of course, painful things will still happen, but we don't have to add on top of that all of these other things. And so much of our day is just neutral. It's kind of ordinary, repetitive. It's not very pleasant. It's not very unpleasant. And we go to sleep. We numb out. We disconnect. And we want to actually be alive in those moments too. And that's the very nature of meditation. It's not to have certain things happen and cut off other things, but to change our relationship to pleasure, to pain, and neutrality. It's perfectly natural to have your mind feel crazy and full of thoughts, and we're not so concerned about that. We're concerned more about having a little bit of spaciousness from that. So sometimes we say, well, sit and listen to sound. Just listen to all the sounds in the room or outside sounds, traffic, or whatever it might be, because that'll create a sense of relaxing deep inside, and then bring your attention to the feeling of your body sitting so that you have a sense of being in touch, being connected. Let the thoughts be more in the background. Don't try to push them away. But the example sometimes, whether you're with the breath or the sounds or the sensations in your body, the example sometimes given of seeing a friend in a crowd. You don't want to shove aside everybody else and say, go away, you're bothering me, but your interest, your enthusiasm is going, oh, there's my friend, there's the breath, or there's the sound, right? Let the thoughts be there, don't be troubled by them, but don't take them so to heart. It's very common to get quite sleepy when you're meditating. For one thing, we're stopping. It's a little bit like how people so often say, well, I was going and going and going and rushing and working, and then I went on vacation and then I caught a cold. It's like we're just stopping and relaxing some. So a lot of times you're just noticing how tired you actually are. But sometimes people get very sleepy in meditation because we're working with a lot of different aspects of the mind. Some are about getting calmer. Sleepiness isn't necessarily a bad sign. It might be a sign that you're getting more tranquil, you're getting calmer, but you're not quite in balance. You don't have enough energy to really help, make that a better mix. And so it's not a bad thing. You just want to work. You want to work to make it a better thing. And so there are simple tools like open your eyes. You can keep meditating with your eyes open. Maybe stand up. Look at the nature of what we call right aim. Let's say your focus is on the breath, on the feeling of the breath. Sometimes people think, well, I'll be mindful of this breath in the next 50. But that's too much. We can only be mindful of one at a time. And so you gather all of your energy, all of your attention, and basically say, just this one breath, just this one. And that really picks up our energy. You might replace the sitting meditation with a walking meditation, which is a fantastic tool. Sometimes people do it in the privacy of their own homes, in which case you can experiment with speed, moving quickly, moving more slowly. If you're out in the streets, for example, I'd say walk quickly or, look normal, as we say. But still, you can be very, very mindful at whatever speed you're moving at. First of all, we have to give it enough time. You can't say, well, I'm going to do this for an hour and a half and then decide if it's worth doing. And that amount of time is somewhat up to you, like how much do you want to experiment? Because it's like an experiment, a month, 3 months, whatever it might be, but set some kind of parameters so it seems reasonable to you. And then I often say, as is true, when you are assessing or you're trying to see if it's made a difference, the month or 3 months or whatever, don't look at what happens in that formal period of practice. Look at your life. How are you speaking to yourself when you make a mistake? How are you when you meet a stranger? Whatever it might be. And even there, sometimes it's quite funny. People say, I didn't notice the difference and I was going to give up. And then my kids came to me and said, please don't stop. You're much better. you're not as angry or whatever it is. And so sometimes other people actually see it in us before we see it in ourselves. So that's not an unusual sequence. Other people see it, then we see it in our formal practice. So please don't despair or feel discouraged if your formal practice doesn't feel like, some fantastic elevation of your mood or whatever. You're building the strength and the really bringing to life the capacity to have a different way of being in your ordinary day, which is the whole point.